Everyone's trying to nationalize these races. That's what we all do in this business. We're looking for bellwethers. How about you?
Well, Joe, I think that's a great observation. Increasingly, American politics defies the old axiom that Tip O'Neill had: all politics is local. Well, not anymore. All politics now is national. And we're seeing that in the Virginia governor's race, the New Jersey governor's race, to some degree, the New York mayoral. And out here in California, where I'm sitting, over Proposition 50, which is the big redistricting initiative that Gavin Newsom put much of his political capital behind. So the reality is so much of this election that we're seeing this year, and I would venture to say in future years, is going to be a referendum on national politics, and particularly Donald Trump.
Well, we wanted to talk to you about this redistricting effort in California. This has been a remarkable story to see unfold. It's now, of course, well, it started in Texas, but now has involved any number of states that will be redrawing congressional maps. I spoke last evening, Lanhee, with Frank Luntz, the pollster and founder of FIL, and asked him which of these races was the most important for him tonight. That's the one he picked. Here's what he said.
It's the California redistricting ballot initiative, because that's going to determine who controls Congress. If the Democrats are successful, if they win that initiative, it will be 5, maybe even 6 seats switching from Republican to Democrat as they carve up the state more politically. That California initiative is going to have a bigger impact on American politics than anything that happens between now and Election Day 2026.
That's saying a lot from Frank Luntz, and the money has been remarkable in this campaign. Lanhee, Democrats have thrown almost $100 million in ads to boost Prop 50, according to Ad Impact. Republicans with $38 million, and a lot of folks are expecting a blowout. What's about to happen in California?
Well, I don't know that it'll be a blowout. I think that the measure is poised to pass. I think it will probably be closer than people expect. You know, that margin could be somewhere, let's say, between 5 and 10 points. But look, here's the reality of this. This was an initiative that when we began the process, when the initiative was first put forward by Governor Newsom several months ago, I think a lot of people would have told you, Joe, it didn't look like it was going to pass. It looked like it'd be a very difficult road. But what Gavin Newsom did was very smart. A couple things. First of all, as we've talked about already, he nationalized this. He made this about California versus Donald Trump. And that framing ended up being very successful. I'd say number two, he was able to get national Democratic Party constituencies and interests engaged in this campaign. So he raised a lot of money, not just from his base of donors, but also more broadly from various interests across the country who wanted to make sure that Democrats had an advantage going into this midterm election cycle. And then the last thing is, for Gavin Newsom's own prospects, this was really a vehicle for him to get out and campaign nationally, to get his name out there. We think he's going to run for president in 2028, and this was a great jumping off point for him. So this has become, I think Frank Luntz is right, a bellwether in a lot of ways for how next year's election is going to go, because what's going to happen if Prop 50 passes is Republicans will go down to as few as 4 representatives. Think about that for a minute. The state of California is massive. To only have 4 members of Congress from California who are Republicans is remarkable, but that's going to be the impact of this initiative.
That's a big deal. So if you're Darrell Issa, Ken Calvert, some of the other Republicans who are going to be directly impacted by this, are you trying to figure out if you can stay in Congress right now, or are you adopting a different strategy to run in a different district?
Well, it's kind of dastardly what they've done, actually, Joe. They've actually put 3 Republican incumbents up against one another: Ken Calvert, Darrell Issa, and Young Kim. All 3 people whom I know well and whom I think have been terrific members of Congress. They're going to have to figure it out, because they've essentially been drawn into, if you look at their residences, roughly the same district. So they're going to have to make some decisions about whether they run there, run somewhere else. It's going to be a very challenging situation. And then districts, Joe, that had been competitive for Republicans. So, for example, Orange County, Katie Porter's old district, that's a district that Republicans have always felt would be very competitive, has gone from being about a 3-point differential in registration to a 13-point differential in registration. So you're talking about districts that had been competitive that are not competitive anymore. It's going to be a very tough road for Republicans in the House coming out of this initiative passing.
This is going to be something. You know, whether we're talking about redistricting on a great sort of grander party level, or the gubernatorial races we're looking at in Virginia, New Jersey, even the mayoral race in New York, they all have costs in common: prices and inflation that are driving decisions at the polls, Lanhee. When you think back to when you were advising Mitt Romney on policy, what do you make of this being the stubborn issue that's getting both Republicans and progressive Democrats elected, depending on the scenario?
Americans vote their pocketbooks. It's a very, very simple dynamic. We've seen it in pretty much every election going back over the last, certainly in my lifetime in politics. That's been the issue that fundamentally, with the exception, we had the 9/11 period. There have been periods where foreign policy issues have been more salient. But fundamentally, elections in America do come down to how Americans feel about their personal financial situation. And I think that's what you're seeing play out in this election as well. That's what's going to play out in 2026. I know we talked about the government shutdown and when that's going to end. I got news for you. By the time we get to next November in the midterm elections, that shutdown could be a distant memory for many Americans.
That's right.
The issue they're going to care about most when they go to vote for a member of Congress is, how am I feeling about my personal economy? How am I feeling about my economic opportunities? And I think that's something you're going to continue to see as a dynamic that's important going into 26, 28, and beyond, because that is something that Americans fundamentally hold in mind very closely when they go to the ballot box. And by the way, to speak to the nationalization of this, that's not just for members of Congress. That extends even to local representatives as well now. So the nationalization of American politics, the rise of economic policy and economic interests as being key, those are all things we're watching closely.